Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, all that jazz. It is myself and comics with the Madeleine Holly-Rosing. Is that
Rosing.
pronounced?
Rosing.
Rosing.
Rosing, yes.
Yes, the creator of the Boston Metaphysical Society.
That is
I'm
quite
s-
true.
I am so happy to have you on here.
Well, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yes, you were recommended by Sam Quinton.
Oh yeah, he's terrific. He's a
Yes,
wonderful
he's
human
a
being.
Yes, he actually recommended you. He's like, "Hey, we have Madeline and she did all this stuff." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, what did she do?" And then I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I heard of Boston Metaphysical Society." But I've always had bad luck with it cuz every time it's near a close in the campaign, I end up
Mm-hmm.
having no money.
Uh,
S- so I canceled it so many times and it always made me feel bad. I'm like, dang it, once again, I was foiled by payments.
it happens. Life happens. I understand.
Yes. So I was wondering if you can introduce yourself and your book to the not yet here audience.
Sure. Um, Boston, I'm Madeleine Holly-Rosing. I'm the writer creator of the Steampunk Supernatural series, Boston Metaphysical Society, which is about an ex-Pinkerton detective, a spirit photographer, and a genius scientist who battles supernatural forces in late 1800s Boston. We started with a 6-issue miniseries a number of years ago. The artist on that was Emily Hugh. And we finished that and went to trade. And then after that, we have come out with 4 sequels. The artist on that was Gwen Tavares. And the 4 sequels are called Scourge the Mechanical Men, The Spirit of Rebellion, Ghosts and Demons, and The Book of Demons. And we're currently running a Kickstarter to put all of those in one big, beautiful trade paperback, which also includes a 10-page bonus story with art by Roberta Ingranata, who is currently doing Doctor Who at Titan Comics, and a cover by Marguerite Savage.
That's amazing. Are you also going to have a hardcover option?
No, not this time. Not this
Not
time.
this time. Dang it, maybe next time.
Possibly next time. We'll see.
Yes. So I wanted to ask, out of all the is it considered a genre? Is steampunk considered an actual genre?
Yeah, it's a subgenre of science fiction.
Subgenre, nice.
Yeah.
Why steampunk out of all subgenres?
That kind of was almost by accident.
Ooh,
The story itself started as a TV pilot that I wrote when I was at UCLA Film School, and a friend of mine. It was originally just a period piece detective story, but it was set in the late 1800s Boston. And a good friend of mine suggested that I set it in a steampunk world. I had heard about it, steampunk, didn't know a lot about it, so I went and did some research, and I totally agreed with him that I think it would fit into that. And there was already going to be a supernatural element involved. So I redeveloped the world, and it became Boston Metaphysical Society. I think originally it was called like 1900 Detective Agency or something like that. It was a while back. A fan of mine recently reminded me that Boston Metaphysical is actually 10 years old this year, which is shocking to me, but he was
10
right.
years old. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, it's been 10 years?
Yeah, when it first started, because we started as a web comic, and um and you can still find the original 6-issue miniseries online. And yeah, I think I started uploading pages in 2012. And then in 2013, I put together a special edition of chapter 1 of issue 1, which I did perfect bound, and then went from there, and just never stopped. Just kept going.
Wow, I'm surprised you did a webtoon. Was it only that 6 issues? Like it's no longer continuing. You're just doing like the actual physical books, right?
That's correct. That's correct. You'll only find the original issue miniseries on my website.
Hmm.
I
How
I
was
have
webtoon format? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was, but this was before webtoons. This was before all of that. So yeah,
Oh, that's my bad. I'm very sorry.
yeah, yeah. Webtoons is actually fairly recent.
That's true.
Um,
I've been reading webtoons for a long time, so like 2012 or something like that. I was looking at it. So for your comic, I was wondering why Boston?
that was a story decision. I am not from Boston. I'm originally from California, though I did live on the East Coast for quite a while. Uh, when I was developing I the story really demanded it be set one in an urban setting, but also a city that was very intimate and uh, and when you said the name out loud to an American, it would evoke almost an emotional response because Boston to us has such historical significance that you can't help but have that emotional response to it on so many different levels, on cultural and almost a mythological way. So yeah, it was strictly a story decision.
Nice. I do like Boston. I've never been, but I've always liked Boston. If that
It's a,
sounds weird, I
it's a
know.
cool city. It is. It's a cool city. It's very different than a lot of other East Coast cities. So yeah, that's one of the reasons I had chosen it because of course New York, New York's been done to death, and New York and Chicago, and so Boston not quite as much. So it was a good choice.
That makes me happy. We got to give Boston some love.
Yeah. And for those of your listeners who also don't realize, I mean, I don't just have the comics out, but there is a prequel, a novel, and anthology, as well as an audio drama, which we finished earlier this year.
My gosh, do you have to watch them or read them in a like a specific order?
No, you don't.
Ooh.
I intentionally do things so they're standalone because I never know how people are going to come into the story, and specifically with the sequels, they each have, like if you bought them at the comic book store or something, they each have a prologue to it, so it would catch you up very quickly and get you into the story. But I do recommend that people start at the beginning because it is kind of the foundation of it all.
Which this trade paper bag will help you with.
Yeah, the Kickstarter running out now is for volume 2. Like I mentioned, it's
Mhm.
puts together all the sequels, and like I said, they are all standalone, but it will enrich your story reading experience by having it all.
I see Hominus is wanting to decide on New York or LA for his book. Be better. Why didn't you choose Boston? I was wondering how is the time management on this entire thing?
Oh, other than my head exploding periodically, um, yeah, it's one of those things where I'm a one person show, and so yeah, I just kind of peck away at a lot of different things a little bit every day, and surprisingly, it all gets done.
Nice. You work so hard. I'm hoping you get some, have some rest here and there. Or is it 24/7 work?
It's, well, pretty close because you also got to manage, you got to get food in the house and laundry and get the dogs walked and all that other fun stuff. So yeah, you definitely have to build that all in.
So after this one, are you deciding to do another one? Like, are you continuing the standalone stories? Or will it ever have an ending?
Um, No, actually, I am I've already done the outline and I've started writing the next storyline, and that I've decided is going to be 4 issues,
Ooh,
um,
nice.
just to give it the breadth that it really needs. So it's going to be a 4 issue miniseries. And yeah, I was very happy to get the first draft done before the Kickstarter began. Um, though I'm probably going to have to put that to the side after we're done because I need to start writing. I was hired to write a story for Lady Mechanica, so I'm going to be working on that after this.
Ooh. So I was wondering, like, there's apparently many people define steampunk in a their own specific way. In what way do you define steampunk in your own words?
Um, it's like Victorian science fiction. It's using some of the aesthetics and the science of the time, and sometimes futuristically amping it up a bit. Um, it's it's a lot of fun working with the late 1800s science because it's still analog and it's more easily explainable to people, to non-techie types, unlike current technology where your cell phone is pretty much virtually magic to most of us. But back then you could actually see the gears turn and how everything works, and that's a lot of fun.
Awesome. That was a fantastic answer. So I was wondering, do you ever have a problem with like overwriting, or is there something you do to prevent overwriting?
Yeah, I have a couple of beta readers, and
Ooh.
but then you have to differentiate between whether I'm writing comics or I'm writing prose. When I'm writing prose, I tend to underwrite, and then with actually I tend to underwrite anyway because I come from a screenwriting background where everything just needs to be very lean, and which actually helps with writing comics because that also has to be very lean. Um, but no, I do. I have some beta readers who always help me keep me on track.
How many beta readers do you have? Do you like is it just a one person job?
Actually, it's two, but the second person rotates. I have one gentleman who, and I'm very grateful to James, who always reads my early drafts, and he's always great because he asks terrific questions, and I know by the questions he asks whether or not I'm on the right track, and that's always fun. And then usually the second beta reader some uh, is usually somebody else who, and they usually are looking at a much later draft when it's more refined.
Oh, we actually have a question over here. It was actually one of my questions, but I
Mhm.
think you worded it better, so I'm going to read it. I see there are people of color considering the time period. Does race and gender play in any of the storylines?
It does in the background. It does with some of the daily events that they have to deal with. I mean, one of the things I deal with in Boston Metaphysical is, um, well, three main themes, which is classism, sexism, and racism. But usually the storyline is not about that. But there will be occurrences where they come up against an obstacle that is in their way because of those issues.
Sorry, I had a drink of water.
That's fine. You're allowed to drink. You are allowed to drink. But yeah, I was really um, uh, very much aware of when I was originally developing this as a TV pilot that I didn't want, a lily white show. And in my research, was I found Granville T. Woods, who is part of the team, and he is an historical figure. He was a contemporary of Bell, Edison's, and Tesla's. And it was great to bring him out of obscurity. And there was no real evidence that he knew Tesla, but he definitely knew Bell and Edison. And in fact, there's a fun story where he sued Edison for stealing the real Granville, not my Granville, but he sued Edison for stealing some of his patents, and which of course Edison did to everybody, but Granville won, and which was unusual. And then Edison offered him a job, which he declined, and started his own business. He was originally from Ohio, but since I'm the writer, I brought him to Boston because, well, I can do that.
Yes, you can. So I was wondering, I actually had to look that person up. I was like, oh, this is a historical character. So of course, usually some people will do like a completely what's it called? A complete fiction story. Sometimes if when they choose a time period, like they'll put no historical characters in there. What made you want to put a historical character in this book?
Um, I mean, there's actually a number of historical characters in the original 6-issue miniseries. There was Bell, Edison, Tesla, and Houdini. Um, and it was just part of the storyline. I just thought it would be fun to get these four people together who would normally never, ever, ever be together in real life, and um, bring them together for a really good reason, because there was a bigger bad out there that they needed to collude and try to stop. So part of it was just fun.
How do you like approach a historical character in fiction? Is doing something like that hard to do, or is that like just a thought?
Um, I try to stay thematically accurate to their personalities up to a certain point. Like with Tesla, I maintain his obsessive character, but I imagine everything else I'm doing is complete fiction. Um, Edison, um, he's a very fun character for me, because he is smart, he's opportunistic, um, but he isn't necessarily really the bad guy. Um, he's just looking out for himself. That there's always something worse than him out there. And Bell, for what little um, we know of him, uh, I just have him as a standard. He's a businessman who tries to keep the peace and keep everybody together. But yeah, the only thing I do is try to stay true to core elements of their character, but pretty much nothing else.
Awesome. Do you have a favorite character in the book, or favorite character in general?
um, it changes depending on which book I'm doing.
Oh my gosh.
It's like when ever I'd get a new cover from the artist. I mean, any of the covers. When I get the new cover, I'm like, "That's my favorite," and then I get the next cover, like, "Oh no, this is my favorite." So yeah, it just kind of depends.
Yes. I was wondering, how did you decide on stuff like weapons? Was that hard to do, considering it was like 1800s, or did the steampunk aspect of it like help you with that?
The steampunk definitely did. I mean, there are some things you'll see that are accurate, um, and I try to keep the science accurate whenever I can. I can't always, because this is a supernatural fictional story, so you just kind of go with it. But but yeah, the steampunk element does allow me a lot of leeway in the weaponry, which makes it really fun.
Yes. So I'm guessing there's like a lot of world building in this book, since this is the volume 2 of the trade paperback. How does world building work? Is that something you just think about already and then make the story, or do you just go along and kind of like ad lib it?
Well, it has to remain consistent throughout each book. And what I did is when we were in production for the original 6-issue miniseries, I had the basic foundation for the world, but then what I did was write companion short stories and novellas that helped me develop canon. And that's what I use to reference. And then when I wrote the prequel novel, which is called A Storm of Secrets, that really allowed me to dig even deeper into the Boston Metaphysical canon. Um, but yeah, I had done a lot of world building prior to that, so I have pages and pages of stuff all over the place.
Just full of papers taped onto the walls and everything.
Oh yeah.
I could just imagine it. This That's how I think a writer has their entire room in.
Yeah. No, a lot of for me it's index cards.
More space that way.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Yes. So I wanted to get in now into the crowdfunding part in general. So I saw you have like a lot of incentives. Is there a way to do a lot of incentives like without going broke? Since a lot of it can be out of pocket.
Well, you need to build that into your budget, and for your funding goal. And so that's when you really have to think about your budget and what you want to do. First, you need to figure out, you need to get a quote from your printer or whatever you're doing to find out what your basic printing costs are going to be. And then the additional incentives, like for me, the pins and some other things, you build that into your budget as well. And then for your stretch goals, some people do forget is you do need to budget your stretch goals. So if your stretch goals are going to cost you money, you need to make sure that you have a big enough stretch goal that not only covers the cost of that particular goal, but with a little buffer in case something goes sideways and you have to pay for it.
Ugh, paying. But I know it. You have to like what's it called? Spend money to make money, that kind of thing.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, that's part of putting together your budget and realizing what your funding goal needs to be, and if and what you can personally handle to try to augment that. So
And so I
I never want anyone to go broke running a Kickstarter. I mean, that's no, don't do that. And yeah, don't do that. And as an aside, I actually have written a book called Kickstarter for the Independent Creator that teaches you how to run a Kickstarter campaign.
Ooh, I'll definitely put that in the description
Yeah.
after the interview, because that seems I have a lot of people saying they want to start a Kickstarter, and I'm like, well, how'd you start? Well, now I know how. This book.
Yeah, and it's on Amazon and all ebook platforms. It's what I call a field guide. It's not very long, so I recommend that people read it all the way through first and then go back and take notes that are particular for your campaign. Because everyone starts at a different level, and this one does start at the beginning for those who are beginners. And I do have an interesting story. Happened a number of years ago. A gentleman bought my Kickstarter book from me at my table at WonderCon on a Friday night. He came back on Saturday and said, "I read your book." He says, "I'm never going to run a Kickstarter campaign or a crowdfunding campaign." And I looked at him and I said, "That was the best $10 you ever spent, because now you know what is required to run a crowdfunding campaign. And if you aren't willing to put in that work or decide, you want to do it another way, that's saving you months or of time and anguish of dealing with a campaign, because it is the second full-time job. And I'm don't lie to people at the amount of effort that goes into these campaigns. But yeah, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with not running a crowdfunding campaign if you can put together funding your project in another way. It's not for everybody, and that's okay.
Exactly. I always say, you don't have to run a Kickstarter. I just by looking at it, I'm like, this seems like so much work I can never do. And it sucks because I do buy a lot of comic books on the indie crowdfunding
Hmm.
area, and like, sometimes they say, "Oh, we ended up running out of money for something like this," or something happens like printing issues, printing costs, and then international shipping, that sometimes it end up lasting at least a year until you can actually, or more, until you actually get your comic book. And they said, well, I never thought it would be this hard.
Yeah, no, it is. And I've actually built in an extended delivery date because of supply chain issues for this campaign. Because I mean, I've already had the discussion with my printer of timing and paper and all sorts of stuff. But I mean, these are the things you need to have had discussions. You need to have those quotes. You need to talk to your printer and find out exactly what's going on, so you're not accidentally misleading your backers, that you have all the information that you have available to you. Now granted, there's going to be stuff that you just can't control, and you can't. A couple years ago, uh, when I was running the campaign for Ghosts and Demons, literally the day before they were supposed to be shipped to me, the warehouse shut down because of COVID. Literally
Oh,
the day before. They were in the boxes, they were ready to go, and they closed the warehouse. I can't do anything about that. And so all I could do was inform my backers, and I say, like, okay, the good news is all the books are printed. The bad news is the warehouse closed down, and all we can do is wait. And fortunately, I think we only had to wait for about 6 weeks, so that wasn't too bad. And they eventually got it out the door. But hey, it just and most backers understand that. I mean, they do. They understand these things happen, and as long as you continue to communicate to your backers and keep them updated of what's going on, there there's usually not a problem.
is there like a time frame of how much you should update, like every month, or like every week, or every 2 weeks kind of thing, or is it just depends on the person?
Well, for me, it kind of depends where you're at. Like, if you're in the middle of a campaign, you're usually updating every couple days. Um, right after the campaign ends, you update right after that, and then usually not for about 2 weeks after, because people know you're waiting for the money to clear. And then you update them 2 weeks after that, and then usually I update people about every 2 weeks until everything is fulfilled, unless it goes over like a major holiday or something, and then you can wait another week or so, and that's usually fine. But then when I've done fulfillment, I update backers usually just on a monthly basis, let them know what I'm working on, what's coming up, if I'm going to be at a con, things like that.
Nice, because there is some people who apparently like they get stuck on like the drawing part for a very long time, that they feel they don't have anything to update about, and I'm like, well, that sucks, but hey, you that means you're still working on it.
Yeah, I mean, but it does help if you haven't fulfilled yet, to at least do a month, at minimum a monthly update, and just say, like, hey, the kids have been sick, the dog has been sick, whatever's happening, I was able to get to page is done this month. I'm planning, everybody's well now, so I'm going to be able to get back on it again next month, or, whatever it is, just to let people know. I remember a number of years ago, I think when we were still on issue 5, Emily, my artist, was just really burnt out, and she was very ill. And she goes, I need to take like 6 weeks off. She goes, I have to. And so I said, you have to do what you have to do, because she'd been great, very responsible, incredibly professional. So I respected that decision. So I just let the backers know. I said, hey, we're going to be delayed. She needs to take a break. I'll get back in 6 weeks. I'll get back to you or sooner, let you know where we're at. And everyone was very understanding. It's just a matter of, you got to communicate to your backers what's going on.
Yes, communication is important. So is mental and physical health.
Yes, absolutely. I actually talk about that in my book, in the Kickstarter for the independent creator.
Do you also have on your book of like finding artists, like how to find one?
That I don't, because there are so many different ways to finding artists and no one way is ever the way. It can be, I found both my artists through mutual friends. But you can find them at cons. You can go through ArtStation. You can go through Facebook. You can go through Twitter. Twitter is actually, particularly if you're looking for female artists, there's a hashtag called, hashtag visible women. You can search through that and see what styles you like. I make up lists of female artists all the time. I just keep adding them to my Twitter list. If not necessarily using them for sequential art, but potential pinups, later on. So yeah, you have to just start making your own list.
Yes, so you have to get a list and everything. So I saw that you're using BackerKit, but I was wondering, a lot of people use PledgeBox. Is there any reason to choose one over the other?
I have not used PledgeBox at all. I think they're newer to the game. So I can't, since I have no experience with them, I can't say one way or the other. I started using BackerKit about 3 Kickstarters ago. And though they are pricey, their customer service has been very good. And it is a pain in the ass to set up. I will tell you, it's very labor intensive, but they do a good job. I'd love to hear other people's who've used PledgeBox what they think of them.
I did hear that it takes out a bigger percentage if you use PledgeBox.
Yeah, that I don't know. I'd have to.
So now
they all take a chunk.
Is the chunk worth it?
Ultimately, yes, but initially, it makes you flinch a little bit. But yeah, it is worth it.
So I'm guessing in your book, you also talk about like mistakes in crowdfunding.
Yeah. Where should I begin?
And of course, how to make a successful campaign if you do go through it and you have all the what's it called, the materials and the funds that you need or have.
Yeah.
Yes. So what is it that you like to read?
Comics and prose. I do reviews for Fanbase Press. So I'm currently reviewing Joe Hill's Rain, which is really good. But yeah, I love science fiction. I like a lot of science fiction and fantasy. From some steampunkish stuff to straight hard sci-fi. Um, I do a lot of audiobooks now just because being on the road and at the gym is just easier. So, but
Ooh,
I would highly, well, right off the top of my head, would recommend Martha Wells's Murderbot Diaries, which are freaking awesome. I listen to the audiobooks of those, and I highly recommend that. If you like a deep dive into world building fantasy, I'd recommend Ken Liu's The Dandelion Dynasty. I'm actually listening to that as well. Um,
I'm
that's
writing that
more
down.
that's what we call that's actually called more silk punk, which is interesting. It's based on a lot of Asian history and folklore.
That's my kind of stuff.
Yeah, and deep world building there. Some great characters, and actually it does have some steampunk or silk punk elements to it, and that they have airships, and so it's it's really well done. So I could sit here and list books forever. So I don't want to bore anyone.
That's completely fine. Like I would usually have like two little books, but then for if somebody asks if I'm watching anything, I have like, okay, you're gonna be here for like an hour. Is there anything that you're watching that you're interested in right now?
Oh, I'm watching I guess a second season of Discovery of Witches, which is
Ooh.
it's okay. Um it wouldn't fall under my great list, but it's nice distracting escapism. It's sort of a cross of um Outlander and and True Blood.
That's such an interesting mix.
It is, but it's um not quite as much sex as say well, either one of them. I'll take that back, because both Outlander and True Blood have yeah, they almost cross into soft porn sometimes. But uh
Because you
yeah,
just gotta.
it's fun. It's fun and distracting. But I think one of the things, I think it was Amazon, that was a nice uh refreshing comedic sci-fi was Upload, and that's on Amazon. And they have the first two seasons, I think, up of that. So if you want something a little more humorous, a humorous sci-fi, Upload does a good job.
Yes. Oh, we got another question from Bryant. How was your experience adapting your work to audio?
Well, first of all, I have to say, um, the if you're talking about the audio drama, which is called The Ghost Ship, it was actually an adaptation, not of any of the graphic novels. It is a standalone story, and it was an adaptation of another episode of Boston Metaphysical that I had written when I was at UCLA. I had a very specific class that asked us to write the fifth episode of our series. And being that if you can write a fifth episode, that means your series has legs, which means that it can continue. Um, but yeah, I adapted that story from another TV episode of it. So yeah, I don't actually. A lot of people think you're doing novelizations and adaptations of your same work. I don't do that. Everything I do is a new story, no matter what medium it's in. So, like the novels and the anthologies are completely separate stories than the graphic novels. And same thing with the audio drama. The audio drama is a standalone, complete story that's loosely set in the timeline of the first original 6 issues, if that makes sense.
That's Yeah, that makes sense. I always wait a little bit just in case, because sometimes I'm like, if there's a pause, that means I can speak. Because I'm always afraid of over talking. somebody. So I'm like, I gotta watch myself, or else I don't want to, or else I'll seem rude.
It's all good.
So I was wondering, do you prefer to watch things or do you prefer to read things?
I like to do both. I mean,
Really?
part of it has to do with just giving my eyeballs a rest. Because I don't need my glasses to watch something on TV, but I need to when I'm reading. So yeah, it's a nice way to relax my eyes.
I'm actually the opposite. I need my glasses to see the TV, but I don't need it to read.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, everyone's different.
Mhm. I have a friend who prefers to read than to watch, so that was interesting.
Yeah, but no, I don't blame her because that way, she can imagine the stuff in her own head.
Exactly. I need to read more though. So I was wondering, how did you decide on the story yourself? Wait, did I
Uh,
ask this question already?
no, I don't think so. I'm just trying to understand the complete question. Are you talking about the world or the actual original premise of Boston Metaphysical Society?
Both.
Both.
Just to be
Uh,
difficult.
uh, I'm not sure how much I can answer that other than it's pretty much a combination of my love of history and steampunk and the X Files. I mean, the X Files loosely inspired it, but with no aliens at all, just supernatural stuff. Um, and wanting to put uh, like a Mulder and Scully, but in a different time period, and have different and both of them have different skill sets, just like Mulder and Scully did, that complement each other. And then bringing in, Granville, our science type, to bring, his skill sets. And so thematically, though they're all very good at their individual jobs, together they're much stronger.
I saw that so I was taking a look at the Kickstarter earlier today and I saw that this was originally some sort of possible TV pilot thing.
Yeah, that's what I'd mentioned.
Mhm.
Boston Metaphysical Society was a TV pilot that I wrote while I was at UCLA.
Oh, that's right, UCLA.
Yeah.
Whoops. Sorry. And I guess we'll just go with the one last question that we have over here. Is there any misconceptions that you know of starting a Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaign?
Um, that you can just put it up and people will find it. In the beginning, with the Kickstarter platform, when it was new and fresh and fun, yeah, you could pretty much stick up anything on there and people would pledge to it because it was the new thing in town. But now that doesn't happen anymore at all. The bar has been raised quite a bit, particularly in the comic sphere. When you look at people's pages, they should look essentially like an entertaining grant proposal because that's exactly what they are. Um, you have to explain very clearly what you're going to do. And I think nothing makes me crazier than going to someone's Kickstarter page or any crowdfunding page, and I have to hunt through the page to figure out what are they going to use this money for? What's the money for? What is the plan here? Which is why I like right at the top always put this comic is to raise funds to print our 26-page comic, as a or 48-page comic, perfect bound, et cetera, et cetera. And they're like, oh, they're looking for printing funds. Great. And then you can move on. And then you can, go into the story. But if I have to dig into this thing to find out what, one, what they want with the money, what they're going to do with the money, and two, what the story is about, you've already, pretty much lost me.
I've been seeing that a lot lately, and it's been a lot harder because I'm very picky about that stuff too, and so I look at it and I'm like, well, what am I supporting?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to be really, really clear. And I mean, as the Kickstarter progresses, like I said, if you take a look at mine, that not now that we've gone through stretch goals, I put, the stretch goals at the top, but then there's a very brief paragraph that simply says, Boston Metaphysical Society needs your help to print volume 2, compiling the sequels plus an exclusive 10-page story with art by Roberta Ingranata into a huge 176-page trade paperback. That's it.
Oh my gosh, so many pages. Is there any red flags that you've seen on a Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaign that is some people should watch out for?
Having a video, even if it's simple, is you really need to have a video. If you don't have a video, it gives me pause. It doesn't necessarily make me go away, particularly if I know the person who's doing the creating, because there's a certain level of trust that's built up. But if it's somebody I don't know and they don't have a video, that's like, okay, why don't they have a video? I mean, it doesn't have to be fancy. Done from, most people just do it from your webcam at home, and that's fine. But that or reward tiers, either too many or not enough reward tiers too sometimes. So
I do like reward tiers.
and yeah, I had a gentleman contact me day before yesterday and said, like, hey, I've supported all the sequel Kickstarters, but I'm missing some of the original issues of 1 through 6. But I want to get a digital because I'm in Australia, and you didn't have a reward tier for that. And I said, well, I can take care of that. Let me go do that. And so I did. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not going to be a huge reward tier, but it's going to help out a couple people who, are missing that.
Oh,
And yeah, and which is fine. So I listen to backers. I talk to backers all the time. Some backers have actually become my friends, and I'll ask them, for their advice. What do you think about this, and what do you think about that? And I take it to heart. I won't necessarily use their advice exactly, but it's like, but if I did this and take a spin off of this, and it ultimately, it usually works out. So yeah, I really do pay attention to what backers say.
oh, that's amazing. I love it when they talk to the backers because I feel like I'm important. I may be too needy.
You are important. All backers are important.
Yeah, that should be a shirt. All backers are important.
Yeah, all backers are important. And in fact, I tell them when I'm at a con, I say, like, hey, if you I'm going to be at WonderCon or San Diego or whatever, come by and say hi. I don't expect them to buy anything because guess what? They already did. And I just say, thank you so much for supporting the project. Look at what your contribution has done. And I show them the table. I said, because of you, I can do this and I can keep doing this so you can keep getting cool stuff. And that's all that's important. They are, kind of an existential part of the team.
You're not making any appearance in Florida anytime soon, are you, for any of the cons?
Yeah, no. I'm hoping, I think the only East Coast I'm hoping to get in is New York Comic Con. And I hope to be back there this year. I was there last year. And we'll see. I'll be at, for those of you who are local in California, I'm doing Hellmouth Con, which is a small con here in Los Angeles. I'm waiting to hear from Denver. I will be at San Diego, and I'm waiting to hear about Emerald City. There's Gaslight Expo in San Diego in the fall. I have a list somewhere. I have my calendar. It's somewhere else right now.
I have a lot of friends who lives in those type of states where they have those cons. I'm in Florida, so I get the boring stuff.
Well, you do have Megacon there, right?
Is that the one? I know we have the Florida con.
Yeah, Megacon's pretty good. I know people have asked me like, are you gonna come to Megacon? I'm like, I don't think so, but thank you.
Aw, that's sweet of them to ask. They're
Yeah,
so excited. So, all right. So, before we go, would you mind, or actually, if you want to, do you want to say the social medias you have so people can follow you and your website if you have one?
sure. Obviously, we're running the Kickstarter right now. That you just go over to Kickstarter and type in Boston Metaphysical or my name, and you will find it. The website is bostonmetaphysicalsociety.com. Facebook is Boston Metaphysical Society Comic. Twitter is Holly-Rosing, Rosing, and Instagram is MC as in cat, HOLLY, and the numeral 1.
Awesome. Oh, and of course, your Kickstarter book on Amazon.
Yes.
Yes, what was the title of that one more time? I'm
Uh,
sorry.
Kickstarter for the independent creator.
Yes, so make sure you guys check that out if you guys are wanting to do a Kickstarter campaign and see if it's the right thing for you. Awesome.
And, and also,
Thank you.
and a thank you to your Hominis Nocturna. Uh, I see their name keep popping up here in the feed. I don't think I can answer you only verbally, but thank you for everyone who has been listening.
Yes, thank you guys. Even if it's just for like a little hello, Robert. Thanks, Robert. I know he's very busy right now. But thank you guys so much for joining in on this interview and meeting Madeline and hearing what she has to say and educating us on Kickstarter projects and her book, Boston Metaphysical Society. Oh my gosh, the title.
I know it's a mouthful, but it works. It works. So
It's so fun to say. It's a tongue twister. All right, so make sure you guys have a nice day today, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.
bye bye. Thank you.